All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Tuesday Times Roundtable. I'm very excited to introduce today's moderator, Emani Jerome. Emani joined the Knight Foundation in March of this year as a program associate. For several years, Emani worked for City Year Miami, where he held several positions and worked in the Little Haiti, Overtown, Liberty City, and North Miami communities. During that time, he managed teams of AmeriCorps members, where they executed an academically rigorous intervention program in several high-need middle and high schools, focusing on attendance, behavior, and performance in reading and math. As City Year's Learning and Development Manager, he developed deeply collaborative relationships with organizations across Miami to train and educate the 212 AmeriCorps members who are working with that program. From there, he worked here at FIU as the Assistant Director for the Center for Leadership and Service at FIU, where he oversaw the student engagement portion of the university's social innovation strategy. And Amanda, who's right front and center, holds that position currently since Emani has now moved on to the Knight Foundation. This included overseeing a civic engagement mini grant awarded to students to help fund community service projects, as well as a social entrepreneurship competition where students can pitch ideas for social ventures and receive mentorship and funding from a diverse range of industry professionals. Those programs still exist here at FIU with Amanda and the Center for Leadership and Service team, so you could definitely still take advantage of those through their office. Emani's passionate about connecting marginalized communities to opportunities that stimulate long-term cultural and economic growth. Emani, thank you for returning to FIU with us today.
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. So again, my name is Emani Jerome. I work for the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which you'll probably hear if you listen to NPR. You'll hear them say John S. and James L. Knight Foundation like a couple of times. That's the one that I work for. I don't think there's another one, as far as I know. I'm really, really glad that you're here today. This is a topic that I care very much about. And so what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about Miami. I'm going to give you like a super short version of like the history of this city, because I think anytime we talk about community development, community engagement, you have to know what's happened. You have to know what's come beforehand. A city is not buildings and streets or public transit. It's people. It's a lot of people. And so Miami is a really interesting city because of its people. And so I'm going to give us a brief history of some of the different communities here in Miami and the people that have inhabited it over time. Then we're going to transition into what's going on in Miami right now. How can you all get involved, and why is it so incredibly important that you lend your talents to this city? It's blossoming right now in a way few cities in the country are, and that's a lot of what I want to talk about. So if that works, we'll get into it. Quick show of hands, how many of you all were born in Miami-Dade County? Just hands. Okay, so this is actually fairly representative of the city. What you'll actually find out is 60% of Miami-Dade County residents were not born in Miami-Dade County. Something that I want to emphasize as we move forward is Miami is a very young city, like a really young city, and a lot of people don't realize that. It's only a couple of years ago when AC and jet fuel even made this place inhabitable for the most part. But to give you an idea of just how young our city is, the city of Miami mayor, Francis Suarez, who I'll talk about in a minute, is the very first city of Miami mayor born in Miami. The first one. That gives you an idea of just how young the city is. There's amazing things happening here, and I want to tell you a little bit more about it and why we need you to stay here and lend your talents to this great city. So kind of getting along with the history portion, most people already know that the major languages spoken in this city are Spanish, English, Haitian Creole, and French. But a lot of people don't know, and this is from the 2010 census, so these numbers are actually outdated at this point. 14,700 speak Portuguese as their first language, 8,900 Mandarin or Cantonese, 7,000 Russian, 6,000 Hebrew, 5,000 Italian. So kind of getting back to this idea that the city of Miami specifically, and of course Miami-Dade County generally, is a deeply diverse area, and the diversity is only going to continue. So we're going to go way back, 10,000 years, to Quechua people were the first indigenous people who inhabited this area. A lot of what we now consider the Seminole tribe and the Miccosukee tribe are individuals who have come from this particular tribe and several other ones that were in the area. Of course, this being West Miami, if you keep going west, you'll get into Miccosukee country, which is a really, really amazing place to go to and connect to a lot of the peoples who call this place home. So if you learn nothing else today, now you know what Miami actually means. Miami is a Tequesta word, meaning big water or big lake, depending on the translations. But it's Miami River. That's what they call it. In fact, I work downtown with the Jonas and James and I Foundation, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard. If you were to go up into our building, we're on the 33rd floor, it's really, really high. But if you were to look out east of our building, you'll see right next to Miami River a little mound, and it's just a circle, this little patch of green amongst all these other big buildings and all the development down there. That patch of green is a traditional burial ground for the Tequesta tribe and some other tribes that were in the area, which is protected country. And so it's hard to imagine with all the buildings and stuff downtown. There was once a people who called this area home, and he looked at this river and was just like, big water. So Miami, now you know. A lot of people also don't realize Miami is the only major American city founded by a woman. This woman, Julia Tuttle. So Julia Tuttle was a businesswoman, and she was buying up property in what would now be considered homestead in the areas like that. And Julia Tuttle was like, you know what, we really need some railroads. If we have a railroad, we can turn this area, this was essentially a swamp, into a city. And she had the vision that this city could become a nexus point for Latin America, the Caribbean, a bunch of other areas. So she reached out to this dude, Henry Flagler, who was building railroads all across the eastern United States, and was basically like, yo man, could you build some railroads down here? He was like, psh, okay. So Henry Flagler built some railroads down this way. This is a lot of what the railroad workers would have looked like at that particular time. As you could possibly imagine, a lot of the workers were black, African American. Also, there was a population of Bahamians who were here, turn of the century, 20th century, who were here. But as you could possibly imagine, the individuals working on the railroads here, which of course now take our Bright Lines and other trains in a couple different areas, couldn't stay in the same areas where some of their white colleagues were. So they created their own town. They called it Color Town. Today, it's known as Overtown. So if you didn't know where Overtown came from, now you do. And so what was really interesting is that as these workers kind of built their own city, there are a lot of really amazing things that was happening in Overtown that a lot of people don't realize today. So Overtown was called the Harlem of the South in a lot of the newspapers of the time. This was a place where black artists, singers, sports figures, celebrities would come down here to perform. Many of them would perform on Miami Beach, but of course they couldn't stay on Miami Beach after they performed, and so they would go west to the mainland to stay in the Overtown area. A really interesting thing a lot of people don't know is that when this city was being voted to be incorporated as a city, 168 of the 362 men, it was only men who could vote at the time, who voted for the creation of the city of Miami were counted as colored. And so there's every likelihood to believe that if there wasn't an Overtown, there wouldn't be a Miami, which a lot of people don't know. And Overtown was really, really incredible. And you can kind of, there's a entity called History Miami. I really, really encourage you, if you are interested in the history of Miami, I'm only touching on a few small parts, but there's a tremendous history to this city. I would encourage you to check them out. They give free tours, all kinds of cool stuff. They're the ones that kind of helped me with some of the data around this particular presentation. But Overtown was really, really popular for a lot of different reasons. One, they created one of the country's first African-American police forces, which is now, I believe, a museum. They created a lot of black-owned businesses. This particular street here, there was a point where nearly 30% of the income, 30% of the money happening throughout Miami-Dade County was coming from this one particular city. So this is what it looked like at its heyday, and this is what that same street looked like in 2010. So then a question emerges: what happened? What happened in this historic city that contributed so much to Miami-Dade and the rest of the country? Well, they were building this thing called I-95. And we ride on it every single day, not knowing that the creation of I-95 displaced a tremendous number of individuals in the Overtown area. And again, you could learn more about the history of the politics of the day that went into why they built 95 directly through this particular community. But as you could possibly imagine, businesses and homeowners were displaced when you're building a giant highway through your community. A lot of people who had money left the area, and the area became economically depressed, and in a lot of ways still hasn't been able to rebound since that particular time. But there are a lot of entities who are doing really great things in Overtown. In fact, there are amazing things happening in Overtown right now. If you are interested in some of the work that's going, I would just challenge you to Google it or come to some of the areas that I'll talk about towards the end of my presentation. This is the Overtown Youth Center, which is of course in Overtown, providing a lot of different resources and educational resources to students in the area. Really, really good work. If this is something that you care a lot about, Overtown Youth Center is an excellent place to volunteer, always looking for volunteers. So we'll keep it going. So a lot of people today are perhaps very aware of the movements of riots that have happened after police shootings of young men of color. What a lot of people don't know is that Miami had, at the time, one of the most costly riots in American history up until the Rodney King riots in LA, which I believe was 1990, 91. So it all happened with this gentleman named Arthur McDuffie. Arthur McDuffie was a young black man. He was a veteran. He was riding his motorcycle through central Miami. Two police officers saw him and then began to give chase. He was speeding. Arthur had several unpaid parking tickets, and in a poor choice of actions, decided to give chase. Two police officers became 4 police officers, and they chased Arthur McDuffie. When Arthur finally got to a point where he stopped, he was beaten almost to an inch of his life and then died later on in the hospital. So the police officers were tried for manslaughter. And in 1980, the police officers were all acquitted. From the moment that they were acquitted, a riot broke out in what is now the area around the courthouse, if you've ever been to the courthouse downtown, and stretched west and then went north. It was a huge issue, and in fact, the History of Miami does I believe a yearly exhibit talking about the McDuffie riots and the effect that it had on the city, a lot of the communities here, the populations here. Again, I would absolutely encourage you to check that out if that's something that you're interested in learning more about. This particular picture was in the Herald and the Day. And a lot of people kind of centered around this particular picture. Particularly black communities here in Miami really rallied around what was happening in Miami at the time. Then there was this guy, you probably heard about him. There were some obvious big changes economically, politically happening in Cuba in the early to mid 70s that you can likely learn a lot more about by going on Wikipedia. But as you could possibly imagine, there was an influx of individuals from Cuba who were interested in coming over to the US. This is a chart just kind of showing where some of the people who were fleeing the country at the time settled here in Miami. So you can see the Hialeah, Little Havana, downtown Miami, Coral Gables, Coconut Grove, Miami Beach, Virginia Key Biscayne, areas like that. These are some of the areas where a lot of the Cuban people who were leaving the country settled in. So in 1980, you have something called the Mario Boat Lift, which was a collaboration between the Cuban government and the American government. About 125,000 Cubans made their way into Miami-Dade County within a 6-month period of time. So think about that for just a moment. 125,000 new people have shown up in a community over a very short period of time. As is often the case whenever you have large influxes of people into an area, there's tensions that exist from the people who are there and the people who have come in. And so there was a lot of there's a lot more about the Mario boat lift that you really, really should learn more about. But mixed into a group of some of the citizens were individuals. There are people who say that Castro kind of emptied out his jails and then used the Mario boat lift as a way to kind of send some of them off. Whatever the case may be, a narrative started to form about Cuban people by the individuals who are already in the Miami-Dade area. So, as you can imagine, the Mario boat lift is 1980. Do you know what was the #1 movie in America 3 years later? Scarface. And so you suddenly get this narrative. A narrative is starting to be shaped. The entire country suddenly has a perception of this city and a group of people in this city. And it's born out of fear, as is always the case. It's fear when large influxes of people come into a particular area. You can research the concept of white flight from Miami-Dade, but essentially in the late 70s to early 80s, when large Cuban populations were coming into Miami, a lot of white residents went north. And so that's why you see a lot of residents who were a part of Miami-Dade County moved to Broward or the Palm Beaches over a period of time. And so again, this unfortunate narrative starts to become what America thinks of this city and the people in this city. Which is weird, considering like an Italian guy is going to play a Cuban guy, and the whole country is going to be like, oh yeah, that's Miami. To give you a sense of that, I grew up in Broward. Don't hate me, but my parents are still up in Broward. And when I first moved to Miami to work, my mother, bless her heart, would call me every morning to pray because she was terrified because I lived and worked in Miami. This is a narrative that still is held by a lot of people, not just in Broward. I know there's the beef with Miami-Dade and Broward. Broward's cool. I mean, Broward made me, so like, you know, we're all right. But these narratives, unfortunately, still exist in a lot of parts of this country. Obviously, the other large immigrant group were Haitians here in Miami-Dade County. So this particular chart shows some of the areas from Haiti where they immigrated here into South Florida, from as high up as West Palm Beach all the way down to Miami. And so particularly in the late 90s, you saw in early 2000s, there was a lot of images like this on television. Again, a narrative starts to emerge about another group of individuals coming into America. Truth be told, Haitians and Cubans were coming into South Florida around the same time, late 70s, early 80s, but a lot of attention was placed on Haitian nationals, particularly in the late 90s and early 2000s because of the Elian Gonzalez case. If you don't know about Elian Gonzalez, again, I really, really suggest you Google it. It's kind of important. But it's also really important in terms of how people saw these two groups. And so this is a shot of Little Haiti. I lived and worked in Little Haiti for about 3 years as a part of City Year. I love Little Haiti. And if you've never been in that community, I really encourage you to go out there, try some of the food, see some of the upper left-hand corner is the Little Haiti Cultural Center. It does really, really amazing arts and different types of programs like that every month. You should definitely check it out. And so that kind of touches on just a few of some of the tensions, I would say, that kind of exist within this city. This is a city of neighborhoods. There's a bazillion neighborhoods that I didn't talk about that are all part of what we would now consider like Miami-Dade County. Anyone still remember when it was just Dade County? Born and raised in the county of Dade? Well, either way, I mean, we don't have to find Trick Daddy fans here, but you know, if there aren't any Trick Daddy fans here, born and raised in the county of Dade, it's important. But this is a city of neighborhoods, okay? So if I had to ask you all right now, what's the biggest thing wrong with Miami? Any hands, any ideas? Transportation, certainly. Is that the only thing? Yes? Traffic, certainly. Crowding, lots of crowds. Absolutely. I mean, there are some recent studies that show that I think they said to live comfortably in Miami as a single person and rent at the current rates, you had to make about $74,000, which compared to the actual median income of people in the city was one of the largest gaps in the country. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, you look at a map, obviously this map isn't showing it because this is just showing neighborhoods, but there's this giant thing to the west of us called the Everglades, also kind of important. A number of species only exist in that one place, and we have some real issues around that space. Any others? Anything? Yeah.
Storm drain flow.
Yeah. That's actually really important. Obviously, one of the things that we say a lot at night is Miami. When Miami gets the sniffles, when America gets cold, Miami gets the sniffles first. And by that we mean some of the things that happen in this city, the challenges that are facing us in this city will be representative of the challenges that are facing the entire country in just a couple of years. No one needs to tell us about sea level rise. No one needs to tell us that. Maybe people in like rural Nebraska might like argue about that. We don't. We can literally just walk and look at it. And so these are real challenges that are happening around this city. So at the end of the day, what we're getting at is Miami-Dade has a number of challenges. It's a city that's very, very young. You'll notice when I talked about a lot of these different influxes of people, whether the Cuban people, Haitian people, this is really only in the last 30 odd years. There are very few people who can claim to be several generations deep in Miami. And some people see that as a problem. Some people are just like, Miamians don't care about, you ever heard Miamians are rude? Here's the thing. So I lived in Tallahassee for a bit. I went to Florida State. And don't hate me. And I remember there was this point when I first moved up there, I went to Publix, because that's what you do. And I was getting groceries, and I was like getting some like asparagus or something like that. And there was a voice behind me that said, "What you cooking?" And I turn around, and it's like this old lady. And I said, "Excuse me?" And she's like, "What are you cooking?" And I don't know what my face must have been, but I must have just like looked at her like, "Are you talking to me right now in a Publix? Like, what's wrong with you?" And she kind of like backed off like that. And she's like, "I'm sorry, I just wanted to know what you were gonna cook." And I looked down, I was like, "Oh yeah, asparagus. I was gonna make asparagus." But like she was already gone at that point. And I was sitting there thinking like, wow, am I a little rude? Like, are South Floridians rude? And I just didn't know until I went to the South where people ask you things in Publix. I thought that was weird. I was like, "Are you gonna try and rob me? Like, what are you doing, lady?" So there are a lot of perceptions of Miami and Miamians. But something I want to really get out here, and what will transition to the second half of my presentation, is that there are some amazing things that are happening here as well. You can really take the youth of the city in two ways. You can either be like, Miamians don't know anything, they're immature, they don't have the same kind of art facilities that New York has, they don't have the same types of public transit options that Boston has, et cetera, et cetera. These are true. This is without a doubt, this is true. We are still very, very young. But you can also see that as an opportunity. The things that you can do here are things that someone may have created in Boston or in New York 200 years ago. But you can do that now, and it can put your name on it, and it's your stamp on it. This is the opportunity we talk about at the Knight Foundation regarding Miami. So when we talk a lot about communities, one of the things I really wanted to emphasize is that you can become much more active in this community if you are not already. And I want to show you some of the entities doing some really great things in this city that you can get involved with, you can become a part of right now. So if you are interested in education and youth development, there's an organization called City Year. Eric mentioned that this was part of, I worked for City Year for a couple of years. Has anyone heard of City Year, perhaps? Okay, well, City Year is a really, really cool organization that employs AmeriCorps members, usually post-collegiate individuals, so people who've just graduated from college, primarily, who give a year of their lives to volunteer in the schools that need them the most. City Year operates in more than 26, 27 cities throughout the United States. A person can basically say, like, I want to serve, and tell me, just bring me wherever you need me most. Maybe it's going to be in Los Angeles, maybe it's in New York, maybe it's in Boston, maybe it's in Miami. But I worked for City Year Miami for a couple of years, and I really, really learned, when I started thinking about the communities of this city, I really think the best way to learn about a community is to learn about their schools. Schools will teach you a lot about a community. The amount of money allocated to said schools will teach you a lot about the leadership in your city. The education that is available to an individual in their youth is directly related to the types of jobs they get, the likelihood that they'll be able to provide for their families, as well as unfortunate likelihoods about them going to jail or unfortunately dying of health-related issues. Your zip code really should not dictate whether or not you get a quality education. And City Year is one such organization that you can get involved with if that's something you're interested in. There's also a really, really amazing group called Dibia Dream, which also works a lot around youth empowerment and particularly teaching leadership skills and STEM skills to young people throughout Miami for free. They also do, as I mentioned, they do a lot of sports mentoring as well. So if you are interested in sports and you want to mentor youth in this city, people who are really, really in need of a mentor, of somebody who can really show them the ropes, Dibia Dream might be something that you want to look into. There's also an entity called Girl Power, which is incredible. Girl Power is based around the Liberty City area and provides a lot of services specifically to Black girls in the community. Black girls often coming from backgrounds of poverty, Black girls who are dealing with trauma and not getting the types of resources they need in their schools. Girl Power provides a lot of those types of resources. So again, if education and youth development is something you care a lot about, that's something that you can really look into. There's a lot of organizations that are trying to focus. I didn't hear homelessness as one of the big issues in Miami, but I'm fairly certain you know that that is a real issue in this community. The organization called Make the Homeless Smile by a woman named Valencia Gunther is another really, really great organization that's really trying to work to not only bring food and economic opportunities to homeless people in Miami, but also attempting to educate them with the types of skills necessary to get out of that loop of homelessness that happens so often. Again, if this is something that you care a lot about, please check out Make the Homeless Smile. Another entity that I really want to point out is a group called LEAP. And so what LEAP does is they focus very specifically on women in Miami-Dade County who are transitioning out of prison and incarceration. A lot of people may or may not be aware that if you are coming from jail, it becomes very, very difficult for you to get a job. It becomes very, very difficult for you to own a home or to get a loan. And unfortunately, that creates a feedback loop where individuals who went into prison, leave prison, can't find opportunities, do things that are not so great, and then go back into prison. What a lot of people don't know is that those same rates of going back into prison are much, much higher for women. And so this organization works to educate as well as empower women who are about to leave incarceration so that they can get the opportunities to plug back into the community, get meaningful work, and hopefully not go back into that particular system. The environment, also, of course, really important. Two organizations I'd point out are the Everglades Foundation and Big Blue and You. Both of these are entities that work to preserve a lot of the species that exist in the Everglades that are deeply, deeply at threat. Something that I think a lot of people don't realize when you talk a little bit about climate change, which scares a lot of people. There are people who think like, oh yeah, in like 10 years, we're just gonna be entirely underwater. And that's not really what the science is telling us. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there are smaller things that will happen as sea levels rise that are probably just as big as us suddenly being underwater. One of which is, of course, the destruction of some of our natural habitats like the Everglades. But another thing is salt water going into our aquifers, into our drinking water. These are realities that, again, we here in Miami have to deal with those kinds of challenges first so that the rest of the nation knows how to deal with it. And these are two organizations that focus a lot on that. Philanthropy and giving. Obviously, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which I work in, which I'll tell you a little bit more about the work that I particularly help do in the city a little bit later, but also the Miami Foundation. So does anyone know why November 15th is really important? Yeah, it's Give Miami Day. So a lot of people don't know what Give Miami Day is. So Give Miami Day is an initiative by the Miami Foundation that was really thought up by their president, a gentleman named Javier Soto, who was told Miamians don't give. He'll go to New York and he'll go to Boston, and those individuals are giving a lot of their dollars to organizations, to nonprofits, to churches, to all kinds of stuff. And somebody challenged him and said, well, Miamians don't care enough about their community to give. And so he was just like, nah. So they created Give Miami Day. on Give Miami Day, you can give funds to the Miami Foundation that can get dispersed to more than 500 nonprofit organizations trying to address the serious things that are going on in this city. You can choose from a big list. Even if you're only giving $5, you can give on Give Miami Day specifically to the charity or the nonprofit that you want to get those funds. Or you can basically say, here, Miami Foundation, I only have $10, but if you can decide where those $10 go on Give Miami Day, that could be the most help in education, the most help in homelessness, the most help in gender equality, then please do that. And they will do so. And last year, Give Miami Day, in one day, Miamians raised $9.1 million that was given to, again, more than 500 nonprofit organizations. Miami is a city that gives. They care a lot about their community. Miamians probably just weren't given a really good way to show that philanthropy before. But Give Miami Day is one of those incredible opportunities to do so. So November 15th, remember that. And of course, you FIU people have some really great resources right here that can help turn some of your ideas into reality. So Startup FIU is a relatively new entity, only a couple years. Anyone heard about it? Certainly hope this isn't maybe your first time hearing about it, so a few people have. But Startup FIU is an entity that exists out of the Mark building. And they do a number of different programs. One of their programs is a proof of concept workshop where, let's say you have a really great idea and you want to turn that idea into a new app, into a new business, into a whatever, but you don't really know where to go from that. You just have an idea on a piece of paper. Startup FIU can help show you some of the things that you need to learn to turn that from an idea on a napkin into a possible, actual, sustainable business. Which is amazing. And if, of course, you already have a business, they also have a accelerator, one of their accelerators that will take businesses either from FIU students or out in the community, and again, connect them to the types of mentorship, leadership, and access to capital and funding that they need to turn those businesses into larger businesses. And then there's the entity, iChange FIU. Boom. Talk to her if you're interested in iChange FIU. This is coming from the Center for Leadership and Service, but this is a competition of sorts where you can get funds to help build your social venture. So if you have a business that you're thinking of, but it's there to help people and built into your business is helping people, there are opportunities here. There's financial opportunities here and mentoring opportunities here that you should take advantage of. This student, Andrea, was the winner in 2016 of this particular grant. And in her case, she and her family really know a lot about bees. They know a lot about honey. And what she realized is that organic honey is a very, very lucrative business now. You can sell organic honey really, really well in farmers markets and things like that. And so what she wanted to do was she wanted to take her family's knowledge of beekeeping and creating honey and give it to those less fortunate in Miami who can learn to start making their own business. So she helped several women, particularly women who were low-income women who might have had a little bit of space. I know she focused a lot in like South Miami where there's a little bit more space, taught them how to beekeep, taught them how to make honey, and showed them how to start their own businesses selling honey here in Miami. FIU student did that, and with some of the funds and help from the Center for Leadership and Service, which also does the Alternative Breaks program. Talk to her if you're interested in Alternative Breaks program. That, of course, is your opportunity for you to volunteer, either domestically or abroad, around a whole range of different things that you might be interested, whether it is, of course, environment, community engagement, civic engagement, things like that. Alternative Breaks is a really great way for you to kind of take your passion here and bring it out there into the rest of the world if you're really interested in service. And Eric also mentioned the mini grant, which again, talk to her if you're interested in the mini grant. The mini grant is an opportunity for if you have a project that helps people and you need money to do it, right here on FIU's campus or out in the Miami community or abroad, you can apply for up to $1,000 of funding from the Center for Leadership and Service for you to be able to do your project. If you care about something, if you care about anything, and you want to do something about it, but you don't have the funds, again, FIU is offering you opportunities for you to be able to connect your interests, your passions, and make it a reality in this community. And there's a lot of other entities that I want to touch on as well. the Venture Cafe is a really cool thing. The Knight Foundation recently gave $1 million to the Venture Cafe to expand their programming. Venture Cafe is housed in a building called CIC, which is in the Allapattah area. And essentially every Thursday, if you are interested in what's the coolest stuff happening in this city, and you want to meet some of the coolest people in this city, every Thursday from 6 to 9, you can go to the Venture Cafe and meet the innovators, the entrepreneurs, all the really cool people who are doing amazing things in this city, all in one place. If you are of legal age, you can also get a free drink, but of course, more importantly, is your opportunity to network. And so the Venture Cafe is becoming one of the top places in South Florida for people who are entrepreneurial, people who are interested in tech, especially, but in general, just people who want to do amazing things and meet the people doing amazing things in the city. Every single Thursday, anybody has an opportunity to go there, meet them, and have them meet you. I really encourage you to take a look at that. Also, the Wynwood Yard. Anybody's been to the Wynwood Yard? Yeah, Wynwood Yard is awesome. Again, if you're of legal age for some of the things there. But one of the reasons why Wynwood Yard is so incredible, and it's from a woman named Della, and you could Google a little bit more about her. Wynwood Yard is incredible for a number of reasons. It was an empty space. It was just an empty lot before Della and her team moved in and created the Wynwood Yard. And so when you have empty lots in a community like Miami, oftentimes what you get is a developer is going to buy that empty lot and then build like another CVS or something on it. And then that's all there is to it. It now becomes a corporate entity. What Wynwood Yard is an experiment in helping the community help itself. So individuals, particularly food entrepreneurs, if you know people who have an idea for a restaurant or a food truck, Wynwood Yard is one of the best places that you can get exposure to an audience that you might not be able to get on your own. There are actual business accelerators at Wynwood Yard to help individuals who want to be food entrepreneurs in the city learn what it takes for you to make your own restaurant, your own food truck, being able to purchase the materials that you need, hire people. All of that is offered in this amazing space over in Wynwood that you can go to. So again, Wynwood Yard, super duper cool. And this lady, Felicia Hatcher, is super important. This is a South Floridian who had a very specific desire to bring tech knowledge to what she calls innovation deserts. And so parts of Miami where there are individuals who don't have the ability to learn and connect to tech skills and the growing tech ecosystem. And she's created something called Black Tech Week. If you haven't heard about Black Tech Week, check out Black Tech Week. It's super important. She realized that there were a really low representation of people of color, particularly women as well of color, in the growing tech system that's booming here in Miami. We're not a Silicon Valley yet, and we don't want to be. We're gonna, whatever Miami becomes is gonna be very specifically to Miami. We're probably not going to have pumpkin spice lattes, we'll have cafecitos. That's kind of just where we are. But Felicia Hatcher is a South Floridian who decided that she wanted to create something that was going to help connect people to tech opportunities. So I would be remiss if I didn't at least talk a little bit about Knight Foundation and the work that I specifically am part of. So again, I'm the Miami Associate, which means Knight Foundation has work that they do in about 26 different cities. In 8 of those cities, we call them resident cities. This is a city where we know there is enough interesting stuff going on that we want to assign a full-time person to just figuring out what are all the cool things happening in this city that we want to work with. So for example, in Detroit, Knight Foundation works a lot on urban revitalization. Detroit's an area that needs a lot of urban revitalization. And the Miami team that I'm a part of, I help oversee a several million-dollar budget that we invest in Miami, particularly around trying to make Miami more of a place where cool ideas become cool businesses. Because at the end of the day, we know one of the things that ties you to a place, one of the things that when you all graduate here, and whether or not you decide if you want to stay here or not, is if you can get a job. And so we care a lot about the economy in Miami, and we invest several million dollars every year in trying to make sure that this is an economy that's healthy and hiring young talent like yourself. So we see there's a really big opportunity in Miami. And so again, our focus is on positioning entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation to play a more central role in this city. And so a place that better attracts and retains talent, offers expanded opportunities, and promotes greater community engagement. So again, At the Knight Foundation, we're really, really curious about what ties someone to a place. What's going to make someone want to stay here? What's the kind of ideas that are going to build a better Miami? And so we see a lot of really interesting things. The costs to create are going down and the ability to act is rising. There used to be a time where if you wanted to build a business and you weren't already rich yourself, you basically had to kind of hope that you can go to a bank and get a loan and start a business and hope that it will kind of work out. We're way past that time. Any one of you with your laptop right now can build an app that becomes a new business and you never have a physical address. You have a PO box that someone can mail something to. This is incredible. You are in a time now where you have more opportunity to turn the ideas that you have into real, actual, viable businesses than ever before. And it's reshaping how cities nurture their talent. When I say talent, and I just wanted to keep emphasizing this, every single time I say the word talent, for the rest of the time that I'm here, think you. You are Miami's talent, and we need you. So what are some of the amazing things in the Miami opportunity? Like I said before, there are some really cool things happening in the city. There's a group called Kaufman who they focus on startup creation. What are the cities that are doing the best at creating new startups? And last year, Miami was ranked #1 in the country for startup creation. It wasn't Silicon Valley, it wasn't New York, it wasn't Boston, it was Miami, where you are right now. There are more things, there are more businesses, startups happening here than anywhere else in the country. We have a really dynamic population. Again, like I said in the beginning, 60% of Miami-Dade residents are not from Miami. And that's a good thing. This is a city that understands that where you come from, your country of origin, your background, whatever, all of that contributes to the economy we're trying to build. We need people from different backgrounds and different ideas and perspectives to build companies here. It's uniquely diverse and international. So again, from Miami, as you all are probably aware, in terms of HQ2 for Amazon, Miami is in the top 20. And one of the reasons why Miami is really heavily considered for that second HQ is from this city, you have access to the entire Latin American and Caribbean in a way that no other city in the nation has. Also, of course, we have easy access to Europe and a lot of other international areas. And there's a lot of new funding potential. There is a time not too long ago where if you wanted to build a company and you were trying to come up with the next Google, you weren't going to get the money for the next Google here. You'd have to go to the West Coast and get an investor and things like that. There are now investors here in Miami who have the funds to help turn your idea, your business into reality in this city. And so again, urban density, arts and cultural life, and the growth of the university system are all things that we care deeply about at Knight, particularly the growth of the university system. Any large economy, especially a large innovation economy, if you're going to look at your Silicon Valleys, if you're going to look at Boston, there's always an anchor educational institution where you're going to get talent from. So Boston has MIT. We don't have MIT. We don't need MIT. Okay, we have a number of different colleges and universities here. FIU obviously being a part of it. So at the end of the day, what we want more than anything else is to make Miami more of a place where ideas are built. You can take an idea and turn it into a reality, and this is a city where you can do it. But of course, there are challenges to that. If you were sitting here right now and you're hearing my voice and you're like, I have a cool idea for a company, I have a cool idea for a job, a business that I want to create, or a nonprofit, an organization that's addressing a need that I want to help with, there are some problems. We tend to be a little bit into style over substance, okay? Like, I could have wore Gator boots today and I didn't, specifically, because we can sometimes be a little more style than substance. Miami is a city of flash. It's one of the things that we're known for. And even when it comes down to our entrepreneurial work, there is some flash, okay? A lot of people may have seen a story that was ran in the New York Times earlier this year where a horse was brought into a particular club, which of course then was a really not great place for the horse or anybody else in that particular space. And people would look at that and be like, that's such a Miami story. Of course there's a horse in a strip club. That makes perfect sense. But a lot of people don't realize there are businesses coming here in Miami, businesses popping up here that are having national influence. So we tend to be very fragmented, and we kind of take a self-over-community mindset. If I was to show you that screen again of the different communities in Miami, you could probably draw a line around this area over here is where the Russians are. This area over here are where the Cubans are. This area here is where the Haitians are. This is still a city that is very fragmented. And we need more places where we can all come together and collaborate and break down a lot of those silos. Barriers to funding and mentorship, challenging to access talent. So I wanted to finish with this short video.
You have to remember that Miami is almost brand new. This is the meeting place. It is not the capital of anything. It is certainly not the capital of Latin America. It is not the capital of Florida, but it is the absolute mero center of the two hemispheres. It's not a place of last resort. It's a place of first choice by 50% of the people who live here. This is a place where the American dream simply happens, and it happens every day of the week.
Well, the best part about living in downtown Miami is that on any average weekend, I don't ever need my car. Downtown Miami represents to me a place of culture and excitement and youth and just fun.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Accessing downtown Miami has been a challenge in the past, and Brightline's Intercity Express passenger rail system is going to be a major catalyst for all of that continued transformation.
I came here when I was almost 7 years old. I didn't speak a word of English. I said that 60% of the people in Miami and Miami-Dade that live here weren't born here. I'm one of them.
Is because there is a sense of possibility and a sense of opportunity that there's no way you can find in other places. Aside from the fact that we probably look a little bit like future American cities. We speak more languages than they do in other cities. I mean, I don't want to brag, but it's a really interesting place to live, and our level of diversity is probably a model for a lot of other American cities.
When you start caring about what you're doing, it starts affecting everybody else, and everything around you gets better.
Art is what allows us to see each other and to have a degree of humanity in a way. And I think that's what museums provide.
Miami is a great place to do business. It's a place that's extremely attractive for new entrepreneurs and established entrepreneurs to move companies into. There's access to talent.
Talent can come from the obvious ways, which is graduate degrees, high-end universities, and of course those are highly valued and really competent people. But here in Miami, we really draw great talent from other countries.
The market itself is really strong here, but having a company in Miami allows you to both work in Latin America and the United States.
Miami is like my heart. It's my soul. It's the reason why, I get up every morning.
Stepping into Miami, you actually are stepping into something that satisfies your needs now, but it sets you up for the next step.
Miami is what the rest of the country will be, or what America will be 30 or 40 years from now, but it's today. We have the geography, we have the weather, but more importantly, we have the people.
This is a town of makers, a town of builders, a town of strivers. I try not to varnish it. I don't think this is a place for everybody. I tell people if you are not really comfortable and committed to diversity, don't come. If you're afraid of change, don't come. Do come if you're interested in building. Do come if you're the kind of person who says, I can transform and create better. That's the nature of this place.
So essentially what I want to close with is, we talked a little bit about the history of this city. We've seen some of the different people who call this city home, but of course there's many, many, many more individuals who have a history of coming into the city. And we've emphasized that Miami is a place where new and exciting things are happening. But again, in order for the Miami in order to build a better Miami, at the end of the day, we need you all. There is going to be plenty of opportunities for you to leave. I left to go to school, but I came back because I saw that there was an opportunity here. There was something that I wanted to help build and help grow. So if you get nothing else from the presentation today, in order to build a better Miami, we need you. Thank you so much. I think we have a few minutes if there are any questions. I'll be glad to answer. Yes?
Yes. You mentioned homelessness. Now, just in the news past couple of days in the Miami Herald, that's the big issue about what was going on in a portion of Overtown under the bridge.
Yes, yeah.
When I came here in '93, there was a big colony there. One of the first things I saw, that got cleared out. They took Pinellas, one of the leaders, to do something to clear that out.
Yeah.
But now it's back again, and they cleared it out again. Is there any really long-term solutions to problems like that? It's very annoying.
Yeah, as you could imagine. I mean, at the end of the day, I do not have the problem for homelessness, since that's a rather big issue. But what I will say is that what's happening in Miami is there's a lot of entities like Valencia Gunther's Making the Homeless Smile, but there's a lot of entities working to make sure that economic opportunity can kind of get connected to people who are low income. So, for example, there's a organization here called Grameen, that's Grameen. They give super small microloans of up to $1,000 to $1,000 to predominantly women, single women, women with families, women who are recently incarcerated, women who have maybe just transitioned out of homelessness to build a business. And Grameen works specifically to help those women find mentors who will show them how to go from living paycheck to paycheck to being able to create their own viable businesses, and offers them the money to do so. There are a lot of entities like that are just essentially, they're trying to build what we call on-ramps from the most impoverished communities to this kind of blossoming entrepreneurial ecosystem that the rest of the city is trying to build. But there is some work around that. It's still a big issue. Obviously, it's still a big issue. As things grow and change and evolve, and as our economy grow and change and evolve, inequality still happens, and the income gaps sometimes only get wider. But there are a few entities that are really trying to work on that. Absolutely. Are there any other questions? Okie doke. So thank you all so very much. I will still be here. I have cards if people want to come chat with me or anything like that. If you have an interest in some of the work that Knight Foundation is doing, you want to learn how to get involved, I'm more than happy to answer that. And my email is also available on the Knight Foundation website. It's Jerome, Jerome, which is my last name, not my first, at kf.org. Thank you all so much for your time, and have a really great day.
Produced by Academic Video Services within the Division of Information Technology at Florida International University.